Welcome to Some Dare Call It Conspiracy. I am Brent Lee.
And I'm Neil Sanders.
And I'm Greg Hall. Welcome to Movie Night.
Now, the thing is, right, when I was watching this back the first time, I wondered, is he taking the piss a bit out of David? Like, is he sort of exploiting him a bit? Like, but to be quite honest, well, apparently the chap that did the film, what's his name, Brian Kraft,
yeah,
he considers David like a friend. He doesn't necessarily subscribe to his reptile theory, which is what the film is about, but yeah, he does consider him a friend. So, and I suppose, you know, he doesn't. I don't know what. We'll come on to that in a bit, but like just in general. So it's the Brandon Corey story. Came out in 2006, directed by Brian Kraft, and it's like a sort of found footage mockumentary style film. I quite like the format. Like it's set up as if it's a film or a television program, called Truth Seeker TV, which is basically like sort of Ancient Aliens or Unsolved Mysteries or one of those sort of Discovery type things. And it reminded me of, like, has anyone ever seen a film called Series 7?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Which is basically like a sort of like
Battle Royale slightly, right?
Yeah, kind of Battle Royale, Running Man, but done like as if it's reality TV.
TV series.
Yeah, it was well sort of ahead of its time, to be quite honest. But it sort of reminded me of that because it's aping that, isn't it? It's trying to make it as if this is just like a film that you've sort of stumbled across, basically, like on the telly. But so what were everyone's impressions without sort of giving you spoilers? I liked it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I don't know whether Brent sort of felt this, but I think I quite liked it because it kept hitting my nostalgia feels, like for like conspiracies that I used to know, like, and go,
No, loads of little ding dings kept going off with me as well. Like to be honest, like at first when I started it, I was like, this is crap. Because I'm just like blown away by how terrible the budget is and how terrible the acting and everything is. But by about 10, 15 minutes in, I'm like, you know what? I actually kind of like the idea here. I like the story. I like what he's trying to do. It's very meta. It's like, eventually, I went with the flow and I just enjoyed it for what it was.
I didn't think the acting was too bad until Joey Diaz turned up. And you can see the total difference between like a professional actor and some bloke. He's just head and shoulders above, just so much more naturalistic and like less like sort of stilted. But
well, that's why I thought they went for the faux documentary route, because no one was a good actor.
Yeah,
and you can just pretend to be you.
yeah, and act act like a person, because everybody sort of looks awkward on a documentary.
Yeah,
but
you can stumble over your words, you can repeat yourself, and it seems normal.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But I thought, despite its limitations, I thought it really did well within those. I thought it really made the most of what it had. Like it is actually a film that I would go back and watch again. Like it's not, it's not going to change the world or anything like that. But it's a perfectly serviceable and entertaining film that's got a really. I thought the plot was quite good. Like I thought the reveal was pretty cool and whatnot. I thought that the sort of the whole structure and everything, it didn't drag. Like usually those sorts of films, like like they get to sort of about 2/3 of the way through and they're like, shit, we've totally run out of like stuff to do. So they'll go off and on a bit of a tangent, and they kind of started to do that, but then they pulled it back together, basically.
Well, it was only like an hour and 18 minutes.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair.
Which is like the perfect length, I find, for a feature film. Not too long. It was kind of like a great length. I think as a concept, it was like really brilliant. The idea of kind of, like you said, of being this kind of fake conspiracy theory, like an episode of something. And I kind of really liked the way it was also like a story within a story as well. So as well as like the concept of being like this fake kind of, like I imagined it was a bit like the Blair Witch Project meets Loose Change. They even had at one point, there was like a moment like Blair Witch where they were in someone's apartment. It was very much like the found footage.
Yeah, that's right.
Kind of like bigger universe of Blair Witch, but cross-pollinated with like loose change, the way we were used to these kind of dodgy interviews, like really kind of degraded multi-format footage. So like as a concept, it was like really brilliant. And the way it was like the device of being Brandon Corey's documentary, which was found footage about this missing filmmaker stroke activist Jude.
That's what I liked about it.
Like, yeah, it was actually quite a clever, in terms of like the devices as a concept, I thought was brilliant. And I thought the way they tried to kind of tell the story was brilliant. And it's funny you say about the reminiscent, even like the drum and bass soundtrack took me back to like late 90s, early noughties. And it was kind of like a time when David Icke and even like, it reminded me of Alex Jones being like in a Richard Linklater film. It was like a bit more of a fluffier time where conspiracy theories, they weren't now like the harbingers of fascism or something. They were a bit more like, it was a different time. Yeah. It was when George Bush and Dick Cheney, who now are probably just considered like centrists, like it was back to a simpler times where they were the most far right society had gone. Whereas now we've gone like way beyond that now.
The thing that I got was it seemed quite affectionate about conspiracy theories. It didn't take the rise out of them. Like, do you know what I mean? It had definitely done its research. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
I felt like it was sort of a truther.
Oh yeah, I'd have thought. Well, I mean,
not full blown reptilian believer, but definitely someone who's into this stuff.
Yeah, it's somebody that heard the stories about Bohemian Grove and the stories about underground bases, and obviously he'd heard about the reptile theory of David Icke and whatnot, and there's a few actually. Like, as I say, if we sort of go through the plot. So sorry if anybody like is now intrigued by this film, is like, oh, I'll go and watch that. Then pause this, because we're just going to go through the plot and probably spoil it for you. We'll definitely spoil it for you. But yeah. So, do you know that Brian Kraft as well? The only interesting thing I could find out about him was that he actually worked as an art department production assistant for 9 episodes of The Sopranos, which, fair enough. What's an art department production assistant do, Greg?
Probably working with props, set stuff, all the stuff that kind of dresses the entire story. So lots of, good art department has lots of symbolism and lots of consideration of color, meaning and stuff like that. So maybe he's applying that kind of conspiracy thinking to his art department work.
Oh, nice. All right. So, I mean, it starts off, as I say, it's like it's a mockumentary, and it's for this program called Truth Seeker TV. And the woman who opens up, and it freaked me out straight away because she sounds exactly like Mariana Spring.
I thought so too. Just a bit.
Oh, good. It's not just me. But so it starts with all this, like, oh, his claims are bizarre, and he does this voiceover. There's a bloke there in silhouette, and he says, aliens are here on planet Earth. Our political leaders, prime ministers, presidents, vice presidents, senators, not all of them, but most of them, they're not really human. They're reptilian aliens. So, it's a strong start.
Yeah. Before we go any further, what do you think at this moment? Because I have an instant thought at this moment in the film, like 10 seconds in. What did you think?
Oh, Bob Lazar. And
Bob Lazar.
Yeah, like it constantly reminded me of like Bob Lazar, the backlit silhouette thing. Like, why? Did you get something completely different?
Commander X.
Oh yeah, and he's called Mr. X as well,
and
isn't he?
He's called Mr. X after the intro. Exactly. I was
that's a fair point.
I'm getting some strong Commander X vibes here.
Yeah, for people that don't know, Commander X was a guy that appeared on a DVD in silhouette at a secret location, which is strange because it seems to be quite a lot of people there. And he does this lecture, which at one point he talks about Dulce underground bases and shows photos of women in cages that purport to be from this underground base. Unfortunately, if I remember rightly, they have to like stop it early because their location has been discovered. Like, luckily, he managed to get everything he was going to say, and it sort of fit into a nice, neat 60 minutes. So it was quite good of the authorities to give them that. But yeah, I'd forgotten about Mr. X.
That's when conspiracies were more theatre.
Yeah, do you know I've got his book as well, like The Grand Deception. And the first time I ever heard that phrase or about any of that was actually on that Cannabis record. On his first album, which is mostly dreadful, apart from Second Round Knockout. And
don't you dare start ripping on Cannabis.
Oh, not Cannabis, but come on, he says it on his second album. Motherfucking Wyclef spoiled it. It's. He apologizes for it. It's dreadful. If you go back and listen to the guitar work that Wyclef does on the last song, that does the he fucks that guitar riff up so many times. It's just Cannabis. He's brilliant. He's massive, incredible lyricist. It didn't quite work out for him against Disaster, but
no,
you can't have everything.
No,
but that's where I first heard about the Grand Deception. The Grand Deception is the concept that basically aliens have been here for ages, interacting with governments, and we just don't know about it. Which is who knows? But anyway, so Mr. X is there in silhouette, and he says that basically he didn't believe in aliens until he captured evidence of this on video. Basically, he says that his house has been burned down, and he claims that the US government's behind this. And so it's setting up this. It's quite tense and whatnot. And they mentioned this US Marine who basically apparently exposed this alien. What does it say? This alien conspiracy, and now he's dead. And it sort of flashes up this newspaper that says US Marine cops family death ruled triple suicide. Did anyone actually read the byline underneath it?
No, I didn't get you. What was it?
It said, right, okay, bear in mind it says US Marine Corps family death ruled triple suicide. It says victims found fatally strangled and dismembered, left notes expressing desires to be together. Like, what sort of a fucking suicide is that? They meant it. Like, they strangled and dismembered themselves to death. Like, wow. But anyway, this bloke is called Major Carl South Jr. And every time he came on the screen, I thought, he looks just like Ras Kass.
Yeah.
And that sort of did take me a bit out of it, but hey ho. But anyway, so apparently this major had evidence that Vice President Dick Cheney was a reptilian alien, and so immediately they're just straight in with this, and like this is the Ike theory that world leaders are either replaced or sort of possessed or of the bloodline, which allows extra dimensional entities who are shaped like 9-foot lizards. Some of them are albino. They sort of shape shift in and out of them. And this was like, it was prevalent at the time. Wasn't, well, prevalent is not really the case, but a lot of people knew about it. David Icke's sort of gone on to other things. I haven't heard him mention the reptiles in ages. He's on to Sabbatian Frankists and hating foreigners now. But it's
he was tweeting about them the other day, or at least he was tweeting a link about them the other day. You know that the woman on the airplane.
Yeah, but he said, "See, this proves that I was right for 20 years."
Yeah.
And it's like, it doesn't. It proves that woman's insane. Like, she got up and
he is still mentioning it though, so he's at least still clickbaiting.
Yeah, fair enough. Like, but I haven't heard him talk about it for a while, which is a shame because that's what everybody wants to hear about, if we're brutally honest. But anyway, so when did he come up with the reptilian theory? He came up with it in 1998, didn't he, basically? Or that's when he sort of first spoke of it. Now, There are some that have pointed out that in 1997 he'd said that the world was going to end and perhaps he needed a massive, massive distraction. But that's just nitpicking, though, isn't it? Anyway.
Normally a distraction is like you get people to stop talking about you. You don't make people talk even more about you.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean,
Unless that was what he was trying to do, but it completely backfired.
Well, or, you know, I don't know. It depends on how you view the person and like how well he took the humiliation on Wogan and etc. 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 So it depends really. Like you could assume lots of different things. He could have gone, right, I'm going to take the piss now then see what happens, or he could really mean it. I'd love that. If there was some sort of note that he wrote in 1998, I didn't believe any of this. I just wanted, you know how you fucking laughed at my shell suit, right? Well, I made you all believe in reptiles. There you go. Yeah. Have that. But I don't think that is the case. Anyway.
So you're saying that he might actually be pulling a Leo Taxil?
Potentially, yeah. Remind us of what Leo Taxil did?
Leo Taxil is the guy who claimed that Freemasons were Luciferians and Albert Pike was the head Luciferian and all that sort of stuff. He pulled this whole hoax, writing like the craziest stuff about basically all the satanic conspiracies about the Freemasons, like about how they do rituals and stuff. All comes from Leo Taxil, and he did it for I think 6 or 8 years. Just selling all this crap to the Catholic Church, and they would print it, and because they hated the Freemasons, and he came out a few years later and was like, by the way, all of that was bullshit.
Did the Freemasons get to him, Brent?
Yeah.
No. Well, the crowd nearly got to him. The police had to throw him in the prison that day because the crowd wanted to rip him limb from limb.
Oh, hang on. Right, okay. Is this the one that did that chap who thinks he's a vampire says that he did the Masonic high-hailing frequency thing?
Bill Schneblin.
Yeah. Bill Schneblin,
he was talking to...
He became a vampire after doing a lot of Freemason stuff, apparently.
And he saw someone shapeshift into a werewolf, allegedly. I used to listen to so much Bill Schneblin.
I've got his DVD box set sat literally over there. Like, you know, I might whack it on again at some point.
I've watched so much of his stuff. He's a great example, though, of like he can say some of the craziest shit and you'll just let it slide. Because some of the other stuff that he says is really interesting.
And he did have certificates and pictures.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's me in my sort of Ku Klux Klan outfit. Like, oh, right, well, fair enough.
Here's me
maybe he's a vampire.
Yeah. Oh, we got it. We'll definitely do a Bill Schneblin episode, like a hashtag one day. I've got so much to say about that, man.
I've got a mate that's a Freemason. Like, I don't think he would tell us that. Like, of course, we've got mates that are Freemasons and mates who are Soros agents and stuff. That's why we do this. But I wonder if he'd watch it and go, "No, that's bollocks. No, that's bollocks. No, that's bollocks." Except the problem is, he'd have to do that, wouldn't he? Anyway, to hide their secrets. Oh, it's a minefield. Oh well, never mind. Anyway, sorry, we digress. Back to the. So basically, Mr. X is there. And there's this dead Marine, and he's saying something to do with reptilian aliens and Dick Cheney. And he talks about his best friend, who's a bloke called Brandon Corey. And he says that his life's been destroyed. And he shows off this pretty cool picture of the guy sat there, and he said he's got his index and his little fingers cut off and his hands all bandaged up. And I thought, you know what? That's quite simple, but that's a really nice, evocative, really well thought out image. Like, yeah, good. It was great. I thought, yeah. Well, he's the opposite of that. It's the opposite of the horns, isn't it? They've cut his horns away. Off.
Yeah, took him away.
Like, they've turned him half Vulcan.
Now you can do the Vanilla Ice sign.
Oh, yeah. Word to your mother. Anyway, so the woman, Mariana Spring, it's not her, but she says, "So is this man to be believed?" And then, I don't know about you, but like the titles that they showed for Truth Seeker TV, which is the sort of the framing device for the show, they had George Orwell and they had reptiles and they had like, are aliens real? Are vampires real? Everything we're told is fiction. And I thought that was spot on. That was just like...
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, you know, the DVDs that you used to get off eBay, even the sort of InfoWars beginnings and stuff like that, they were like... You know what? They were so well done, those InfoWars things. It's just like a big cacophony of explosions and police violence and stuff like that. I genuinely thought, like, when in bands that I was playing in, like I was playing like punk bands and stuff, we should project this like just on ourselves as we play, like, and it just, but I just didn't have.
That was Rob Jacobson, wasn't it?
Yeah, it would have been, wouldn't it? Yeah, actually,
it was back in those days.
Yeah, we spoke to Rob, and like he's a talented man, like, but he certainly, like, I mean, definitely Infos. They really got that boom bass. They made you, it riled you up. It made you go, right, I want to sit here now for 2.5 hours and listen to Alex Jones.
And those bits were so perfect, like you say, the way they were designed, like the idents, the graphics. Like for me, the whole concept was genius. But for me, they set such a reality so high with the concept that's for me where like the performances didn't then match how deep the reality they'd created. Like, you know, personally, I felt like the Mr. X, they used him a lot. And a lot of his answers, a lot of his stuff felt very scripted.
Yeah.
And even the woman doing the voiceover, for me, she didn't feel right for Truth Seeker TV. She felt very authoritative and very English and very like almost like the wrong. And I actually felt if this had no voiceover, it would have been much stronger. I felt like they should have lent a bit more into this genius concept that they've got and just gone fully that it's like a YouTube made a la Loose Change, that kind of vein, and lean way more kind of into that concept. Because I just found, for me, some of the performances just felt too scripted, felt too like actors acting.
Yeah.
And then when you had people then like David Icke appear, David Icke was, for me, the best thing in it. He was like phenomenal. Like, because he was so real. Like, he made the performer, like the guy playing Brandon Corey, again, I felt was a little bit like cheesy and didn't believe his performance. And then when you had Ike came on, Ike was like on some Stanislavski method acting, kind of like Meisner or Strasberg. He was so deep in it. Like, and what genius improv. Like when this officer who is probably just like, I get it, annoying Jobsworth saying like, you can't film there. But he suddenly switches it into like being, you're stopping us from talking. You know, everything he's saying is true. But the way he turns the theatrics on and the way he's playing to the camera and even blocking himself out, I felt Ike in it was the greatest, the most realist performer in it. And I thought, what a coup that they got him in it, like, because he is so iconic. But I think him and the format were so real that the other elements like struggled a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. I mean, the thing is with Ike, I mean, A, he's media trained, and B, you can say what you like about him. He's an incredibly charismatic and engaging speaker. Like as I've said this many times, the first time I watched David Icke, very much like the first time I watched Judas Priest, I went there to take the fucking piss. And after about 10 minutes, I was like, oh no, hang on, this is actually really quite good, isn't it? Like, and so you had to sort of, I was basically won over by his performance and as you say, the passion in which he sort of delivers stuff and the confidence that makes you think, Nobody would deliver this like this if they didn't actually have all the facts at their disposal. Like, there's just no way anyone would have the balls to, like, you know, speculate about something as incredible as reptilian aliens. Like,
and he starts directing it. He starts telling them to like hide the camera in the jacket. Like, he completely takes over. Like, and I found it brilliant. I found him like like separate to conspiracy theories and whatever your opinions on that. As a showman and as a performer, he took all the attention and used everything there. And it certainly did capture a time where you could tell he wanted stuff or knew like that this would be a good clip for a documentary. This is a good clip that could potentially be good online.
And also a time when David Icke was I think he's gone through several phases in his career. I think at the first set of his phase, he was basically obviously had some sort of a breakdown and started to get interested. Then he started to get interested into, more sort of broad things, little bit of anti-Semitism here and there and whatnot. There was a point where he was almost like a journalist, where he was like, just bringing stuff in and letting people look at it and stuff. And then, I don't know, I think more recently he's become a bit more sort of contrarian and sort of, we know this, so we know this sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean? Building on sort of old ideas and stuff like that. But there was a point where, like, who's the? Oh, I can't remember the bloody name. Is it Maya Angelou? There's a fan of.
You're talking about Alice Walker.
Sorry, that's who I'm thinking of. Alice Walker. Yeah.
She became a big David Icke fan, right?
Yeah. She's she considers him a friend, and like, she's been massively criticised for association with him because of certain things that he said about, like, Rothschild's Jews, like stuff that he's flirted with around the Holocaust, his continual sort of like talking about, protocols of the Elders of Zion. But here's the thing, right? Okay, I can relate to Alice Walker because, like, you kind of like his books are like, massively thick, and so whenever people sort of used to bring up stuff like that, it's kind of, don't watch that bit, like, look at this bit, like, okay, do you know what I mean? And it was I think some of the things, I don't think he realized how sort of evocative they were, and some of the things I think he's just a bit wrong about, and looking back at it, it was a bit sort of maybe we wanted to, like, believe this bit, so we gave him a pass on that bit. Also, you've got to remember, again, the time, like, is so different. In the late 90s and early 2000s and stuff that would fly, like, that just wouldn't happen nowadays. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, certain attitudes to race and racial stereotypes and like, sexual stereotypes and sexual orientation stereotypes and stuff like that. I know that doesn't seem like a big thing, but it changes everyone's perspective on the world to the point where, like, stereotypical concepts of Israel or whatever were actually sort of not frowned upon and not poured over in the way that they are now, where lots of people go, actually, that's really not accurate. It's a stereotype, or it's a sort of very narrow view or whatever. At the time, it's a different world. Like, I know that sounds stupid, and I feel old as fucking dirt saying that, but it's like, but it's true. Like, basically, it's sometimes difficult to judge how things were received in the past because of more generalized attitudes and whatnot. But anywho, going on. So basically, so Mr. X, he fears for his life, and he's hiding his identity because of this, and he starts to tell the story of his mate Brandon Corey. And Brandon is basically, for some reason, he's this super intelligent, mega rich guy that lives in Malibu. Like, but it doesn't quite sort of explain what he did really, or maybe it did, but I missed that. But anyway, it's like,
I missed it too. I was looking for that.
It was glossed over. It was just, they mentioned he was a millionaire at one point and then just moved on to the next thing. So.
And he's looking after his two kids, but which is, again, like, it's unusual. It's one of those things where at the time I didn't really think much about it because his wife is still alive. They're just separated. He's looking after the two kids, which is like, why aren't they with the mum? Like, the more I think about that, that's just a plot device to introduce paranoia later, which is, again, fair enough. And it does, like, it does happen. I know some people that are with that brought up by their dad as opposed to their mum or whatever, but it would usually go the other way, surely. Like, I think I've just spotted a bit of lazy writing there, but never mind.
Yeah. I think there's bigger plot holes as well.
Quite. But so anyway, they're doing this, or they're hanging out with this bloke called Jude Kemper. And Jude Kemper's like sort of making a documentary, and he's sort of like a sort of left wing Alex Jones, and he's doing a documentary about Dick Cheney, which has got the fabulous title Warmonger. Which is fairly accurate, to be fair. And this is obviously, again, this is where they know their audience. They really know their audience. And at the time, it was anti-imperialism, like, anti sort of. We felt that the Iraq War, regardless of the justification of Saddam was a bad bastard, absolutely, like, and it needed to be removed at some point, but it couldn't. At the time, people couldn't help notice that they'd somehow tacitly connected this to 9/11, which really didn't have a connection to Iraq in any sense. The concept of weapons of mass destruction seemed to be a little bit cagey, to say the least. But and then, Dr. David Kelly, his obvious murder that was staged to look like a suicide. And at the time, it was all about oil. Or that this was the sort of the take on the street was that the war was about oil. I heard a very interesting thing, and I have no idea as to whether this is true, because it came from somebody in the intelligence agencies. Ooh. And I wasn't chatting to them, like it was on Radio 4. Like, but he was talking about the failures of the Iraq War. And he was saying that it wasn't necessarily true that the government made up the lies about the weapons of mass destruction. For a time, a certain sect of people genuinely thought that they were there. And the reason that they thought they were there was because Saddam had actually initiated certain weapons programs that were underfunded and badly run and never really got anywhere. But because of his dictator-like reputation, I don't know if people know, but he had a awful reputation, and he all these people lied to him and continuously lied to him. And so when he says, are the lasers attached to the sharks? Oh yeah, definitely Saddam. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I don't know how true that is, but the idea is the intelligence had come from Iraq that right at the top, and at the top they believed that they had weapons of mass destruction, but they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. They were just told that by the people who were supposed to supply them, who were afraid that they'd be murdered if they found out that they didn't. How much of that is bollocks and covering up? And because it's one of those things where it's like, it sounds plausible, but how would you ever prove that? And the only way that you'd prove that would be from somebody from British government or whatever saying, well, I've got this witness who we swear blind works for so-and-so or whatever. And there's a problem there, because essentially they're investigating themselves. But anyway, we digress.
I don't know if you guys found this when watching it. It's kind of like what we said about the start. It is, when watching this film, it feels like reminiscent of a time of 9/11 politically, wherever you were, and even talking about things like 9/11 truth. I think everyone got touched slightly by that in some respects. What defining, thinking back now of what was 20 odd years ago.
Yeah.
What a defining moment for our we're probably all from that same generation, right?
Yeah, totally. And it wasn't just that as well, because you got to remember the times, you had a mainstream sort of proponent of it. I remember going to the cinema to watch Fahrenheit 9/11, I think.
Yeah, of course.
And Bowling for Columbine.
Yeah.
And because I'd got into Alex Jones at that point, I came out of Fahrenheit 9/11 absolutely seething. And but there was also Nick Broomfield doing things like Kurt and Courtney and Biggie and Tupac, and I can't remember his bloody name now. The guy that did Fahrenheit 9/11,
Michael Moore.
So it was
Michael Moore.
Thank you very much, Greg. His early stuff, like Roger and Me and stuff like that, is powerful shit.
And Bowling for Columbine. It's great.
Yeah. Again, you could make arguments against certain things that have come out that he's twisted facts on it. But it's a very, very, you can't argue against the message of the documentary by any stretch of the imagination.
But then I guess this is the thing that, and I'm coming at this as a filmmaker. And what I found fascinating about this film itself is it is a constructed, what we call a mockumentary. But for me, there's no real documentary, fiction and non-fiction are both as a manipulation of footage, of audio, of the way something's framed. And interesting enough, I've seen both of you guys kind of sometimes be attacked online about, like Brent, when you've done interviews going, oh, the way they framed you, the way they've cut you. And I think, Neil, I've read somewhere about some interview you had done and been cut short. And the way kind of narratives are, everything is controlled. Everything is manipulated. Actually, there is no such thing as objectivity. It just doesn't exist.
No, your personal sort of like what expression, or sort of even the sort of way that you understand and the facts before you sort of divulge them back to people is always going to have. Yeah, that's a fair point. I think it would be very unlikely at any point on this song if we said, you know what, I've been reading Goebbels' diaries, and some of the things he says actually, like, that's never going to happen, is it? Really? Like, we're always going to have a like, a baseline or whatever. But right, so anyway, so Jude Kemper. Basically, he's there and he's doing this documentary about Dick Cheney, and he says that there's not just a warmonger, but there's more to this shapeshifter that has yet to be revealed, which might be a bit of foreshadowing. I don't know, but anyway, so now they introduce Brandon's ex-wife, and he says that basically she's a bit annoyed because she says that that Kemper was very, very left-wing and out there into wild conspiracies. And I thought it was a bit weird because basically, so it implies that she's quite right-wing, and Mr. X said that he voted for Bush and Cheney.
Yeah.
But again, now that I'm saying that out loud, right? Okay, again, it's a plot device, isn't it, to make sure that it puts credibility on him. Because if he was a big raging lefty like Kemper, he would be biased towards it. So if he's a fan of Cheney, he's been convinced by it, it gives it more sort of like weight, doesn't it? Really,
but it's really interesting that they're framing the conspiracists
as left-wingers. Yeah.
It's a good. That's the time, isn't it? What, 2006 was it made?
Yeah, because it was anti-Bush stuff. Even the sort of anti-Blair stuff was the fact that Blair wasn't considered left-wing enough, and that he was essentially the puppet of Bush, or
a poodle.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even like a creation of Margaret Thatcher. I've heard that theory put around like quite a lot, basically. But yeah, it is a fair point. Like, they are left-wing, aren't they? Basically, which is true. But she gets upset because Kemper told her that they were living in an Orwellian. What did he say here? Orwellian times, and soon there would be a police state, which is basically Alex Jones type stuff. Which is, that's New World Order stuff. It's still, and she was very, very annoyed because he'd called Dick Cheney a terrorist and a Satanist. And again, that's directly from like Alex Jones and David Icke and I'm sure various other people have called Dick Cheney both a terrorist and a Satanist. Now, this is interesting. For some reason, they start to talk about Michael Fagin. Michael Fagin's a chap that broke into Buckingham Palace. Now, the story to this is that basically in 1982, he broke in twice. The first was in June 1982, and what he did is he shimmied up the drain pipe, and as he was looking in through the window, a housemaid saw him and she screamed, and he dropped down, and she alerted the police or the security guards, who basically said, "Oh, you're being hysterical," and ignored her. So then he got in through now this is where it gets a bit silly, because he got in through an open window and he wandered around for about half an hour, and he stole some wine and he stole some cheese and crackers, and he sat on the throne drinking wine and eating cheese and crackers, which, it's a bit of a bucket list thing, to be quite honest. And apparently he tripped 3 alarms, but security, other than the maid also saying that she'd seen an intruder, and security just went, it's nonsense. It's all just like, it's faulty, basically. So he turned up about a month later in July 1982, and he broke into again, and he broke in directly into the Queen's bedroom. Now, at the time, it was said that he'd sat on the foot of her bed. He somehow managed to break an ashtray and cut himself as well. So basically, he's in the Queen's bedroom covered in blood with a big shard of glass. And apparently, it was reported at the time that he was he sat on a bed for 10 minutes and had a chat with her. But later on, when he was questioned about it later, he said, no, the Queen got up straight away, said, who are you and what are you doing here? And just walked out of the room, sort of leaving him there. And then he was arrested and he was put in a psychiatric unit for 3 months. Now, here's a bit of a weird aside. That story, I wasn't familiar of that story until like some guy that I know, a friend of mine in the conspiracy world, told me about it. But his take on it was, there's no way that happened. You're not breaking into Buckingham Palace. What's happened there is the Secret Service have stumbled in on the Queen's bit of rough, and they've had to they've had to spin it in such a way that that it looks like basically he's sort of, a stalker, burglar, trespasser or whatever.
The Secret Service already know about that kind of thing.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? Again, this was strong in the feelings and low in the sort of evidence, like this particular one. But like he maintained that for years. I've got no idea if he still if he still thinks that. But yeah. Anyway,
it was brilliant how the film built like on use that though as a device.
Yeah.
Like, built on that kind of grain of truth. A bit like conspiracy theories in a way. Like there's elements that are real, and then they built up around it. I thought it was brilliant, really clever bit of writing.
Have either of you heard of a bloke called Klaus Wagner?
I don't know.
I'll guarantee, Brent, I'll guarantee you've seen him, and you may have seen him as well, Greg. Like, have any of you ever seen Chris Everard's first Illuminati film? You must have seen that.
Yeah,
definitely.
Right. Can you remember there was a guy that was stood there, a guy with glasses, big sort of like 80s hair, and he's holding a placard with a picture of Queen Elizabeth on it with a sort of forked tongue, and it says, "Lizard Beast, we are 666 of you." Can you remember that? If you Google it, I guarantee you'll go, "Oh, fuck yeah, I've seen that." Like, anyway, now here's a weird thing, right? Because that's obviously a reference to the Queen being a beast or being a lizard. He calls her lizard beast and makes a reference to the devil. Klaus Wagner was a chap who in 1996, so this predates David Icke by 2 years, he was stalking Princess Diana, and he basically also sort of semi-stalking the Queen, trying to let Princess Diana know that the Queen was a beast, the beast of Revelation, I believe, like something to do with the devil. But the lizardy stuff is there, and that makes it's a reference. Basically, his wife said, "I'm sick of him now." I took him back when he was on heroin. I took him back when he was going with prostitutes. But now he's running around the country getting arrested and frightening our children by telling them that the Queen is a beast. I've had enough. And it's like, well, yeah, no, fair enough. Everyone's got their threshold, haven't they? So, But anyway, yeah, this is a guy that was in 1996, and he was making sort of references to the Queen being a lizard, and so one wonders whether this was picked up by Icke and incorporated into his theory. Basically, like we just don't know. Basically,
I used to think that the Antichrist was going to come from that bloodline.
Ooh, yes,
I was introduced to it with the Prince Charles would be the Antichrist.
Oh, yeah.
The Antichrist in a Cup of Tea, I think it was the name of the book.
The one where it's talking about the logo and
the coat of arms.
Yeah, and the coat of arms basically matches the Beast of Revelation or whatever.
Yeah, the coat of arms and the unicorn and all that. Yeah. But eventually, mate, I did actually start to wonder, like, was George or Charlotte like the Antichrist? Like, when George was born, because me and my partner actually predicted when he would be born.
Wasn't he born on like the solstice or some weird thing?
Yeah, we knew it'd be that day or something. Like, we predicted both his birth and Charlotte's birth.
Oh, I bet you were chuffed at the time.
We were well after. Yeah. We thought we were onto something, but
yeah.
Who knows?
And I guess there is that crossover between like the reptilian conspiracy theory and basically kind of religious imagery. The idea of like back from like, you know, the Garden of Eden and the snake and the devil.
That's where I went.
Yeah,
that's totally where I went with it, because I thought, well, David and all these people can't be lying. I mean, David spoke to 200 people that have actually seen it, but I don't really believe in reptiles, but I do believe in demons. So, maybe it's demons that they're seeing and saying that it's reptile.
I rationalise it down the other way, basically, because I wasn't particularly religious, but I went, well, maybe they are aliens. Maybe all the sort of flim flam and crap is blah blah blah. But I entertain the concept of aliens, and like, you know, if they look like sort of like dolphin type things, like, you know, like the greys, then it's plausible that there's sort of big reptilian type ones, I suppose. In as far as, and this is the thing, when you open your mind up to sort of like aliens could exist, it could be fucking anything, really, couldn't they? Did you ever hear the concept that Bigfoot was actually a breed of alien? That's why they're only seen quite rarely.
I used to think it was an interdimensional being. Like, I thought it was a djinn.
What, the Bigfoot?
Yeah, I thought it was a djinn, so it could go in between the two worlds. That was full disclosure. That's the crazy shit I believed.
Well, you know, but again, you're looking for answers, aren't you? And you're looking for answers like and in ways that you think are plausible. And the closer and the more sort of involved you get with these things, you know, this isn't necessarily a good way to sort of actually sort of find out facts. But if like so-and-so's mentioned this and so-and-so's mentioned this, there's only so many anecdotes before you go, hang on, this is all starting to paint a picture. But again, this is kind of what we discuss on the podcast. Like and I always get this, I can't remember if it's a Manet or a Monet. I think it's a Monet. But basically, like, you know, the style where it's from a distance, it looks like it's a very coherent and beautiful picture. And the closer you get, you'd realize it's lots and lots of individual dots that aren't actually connected, and that's, we'll come back to that later, because that's, David makes a point about that when David Icke turns up in the film. But so anyway, so basically, right, so why do they mention Michael Fagan? Because this bloke Kemper, who's done the Warmonger documentary, he's going to sneak into Dick Cheney's bedroom and ask him some questions. You know, so that's what he plans, and he decides to disguise himself as a Secret Service agent, and he breaks into the hotel room, but he's caught by real Secret Service, and they give him a good old English style drubbing, and basically until the camera breaks. And again, it's quite nice the way they sort of like they sort of garnish the thing. The Truth Seeker TV speaks to a real Secret Service agent who says, "Oh no, this is realistic." And then this Secret Service agent accidentally reveals that there's a network of secret tunnels under America that are used, like that go across the entirety of America, that are used for sort of, he says, for transporting dignitaries, and then he doesn't really want to talk about it a lot more, which is cracking, because it's you know, it's Phil Schneider and it's deep underground military bases and the Dallas airport,
and all like what 10 plus years before QAnon.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I mean, the stories were, there's several, weren't there? There was Phil Schneider.
Yeah, totally.
Was talking about, it was maglev monorails, and then when they came out as a thing, everyone went, hang on. Maybe he was telling the truth about fighting aliens underground. Maybe he was. I don't know. Like, but anyway, he apparently was telling about these tunnels, and there's aliens in some of them, and in others there's just sort of you know, Secret Service guys, and there's the concept of the Dulce base as well, which what was the guy who's, I want to say Greg Esposito or something, but that's not. I think that's some bloke that does some television show. Who was the guy that he brought out the Dulce base video and talked about Nightmare Alley? And for years and years and years, that video of people in pods was going round, and it was a bit grainy and it was a bit like weird, and everyone went, bloody hell, this is incredible, until they found out that it was actually a clip from a sci-fi film. And but anyway, there was a guy, Johnny Kassar, I can't remember his name. Anyway, but again, this is what's good about this film, because it makes reference to all these things. So the audience who's buying it off davidicke.com is going to go, oh, all of this is going right up my flagpole, basically. And it's but anyway, so Jude Kemper's gone missing, and they try and get a private detective involved. And this was a really nice touch, because he looks at all of the documentation that is supposedly Jude Kemper's, and he says, look, it looks real to me, but I can't find him on any of the databases. I can't find his old school. I can't find his social security number. I can't find a bank account registered to him, and blah, blah, blah. And that, again, that was a clear reference to Bob Lazar, who was a sort of supposed whistleblower for Area 51, who does actually have quite a lot of credibility, to be fair. And he claimed that the reason you couldn't find out that he was like this ace sort of educated bloke at MIT and had all these credentials was that the government had literally wiped the references. And I know that sounds like, yeah, right, bollocks, right? But there's a certain amount of evidence with Bob Lazar, people that sort of have, to a degree, corroborated his story of working at various places. And I don't know, Bob Lazar is one of these people where I'm not sure what I think about him, to be quite honest. I think he might be telling the truth about some stuff. And he's into machine guns and strapping rockets onto the back of bikes and things like that. He's mad as a bag of badgers. But that doesn't mean he's not telling the truth. But who knows? Anyway, again, another nice sort of reference, to be quite honest. So Brandon sets up this website, which is called findjudenow.com. And then this was interesting as well. He goes on this Rush Limbaugh style show. And I thought the bloke was clearly trying to sort of emulate Rush Limbaugh, who is right wing. And it's interesting. So it's what you were saying earlier, Brent. They're framing the conspiracists as radically left or left of the mainstream, so to speak, basically, and which is weird because now you're sort of your Glenn Becks and in the sort of, is he dead now, Rush Limbaugh? Did he die a couple of years ago, I think? But in his sort of latter years, he was going more Alex Jonesy, and they do the the stolen elections and the anti-vax stuff and blah blah blah, etc etc etc. So it was interesting to see that. But again, at the time, I was convinced that Alex Jones was apolitical, which is so silly in retrospect. But I suppose, he had Immortal Technique on his show, and they had a perfectly sensible conversation where there was mutual respect. And so, at the time, he used to make a strong point of both political parties are wings of the same bird. You can't trust either of them. Blah, 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 blah. And that was going quite well, right up until, basically Trump got involved. And then everyone went, yeah, all that. Scratch that. We're doing this now. And it's oh, right, fair enough then. That seems unusual.
It felt like it went from quite a big change as well when conspiracy theories, like you say, from this period, late 90s, early noughties, felt more apolitical, felt more like it was the state, it was left, right. And it was, and talking about QAnon, the way, for me, QAnon changed conspiracy theories, where instead of actually the state being the enemy, suddenly the president, Trump, was the good guy. Suddenly someone who would usually be quizzed as being, completely corrupt is actually fighting the deep state. So it kind of inverted the idea of being fearful of the political institutions itself. But I found, was Brian Whitman, do you know the guy that did the radio show, is he a real guy like David Icke?
I don't know. He's got a cracking voice, hasn't he?
Because he comes across, what I found really interesting was he didn't believe Brandon Fraser. Brandon Corey, sorry. He kept saying this is a fiction, and he actually called it out. And I found this one of the most realist moments.
Oh, you wonder if he was like a sort of a meta thing where he'd actually got himself on he tried to do a Blair Witch, got on a real radio show. That's interesting.
I think with David Icke, I could be wrong.
He is real.
It feels like Brian Whitman's a real guy.
Oh.
He is real, but it didn't work. It backfired. Yeah. And actually, what I found really interesting was we had gone from like Alice Through the Looking Glass here. It was a fake documentary being called out by a conspiracy theorist. Someone kind of like has a career of selling narratives.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Didn't believe in this narrative of the film. I found it a really interesting, because he was even joking, going, I'll buy a mug from the website.
Yeah.
He didn't believe it. Like, I felt that Brian Whitman, unlike David Icke, didn't go for it and could see this was a scam. Has that blown your mind now, Neil?
Yeah, that has a bit, actually, to be quite honest. Because then after that, they go to basically, or skip ahead in a bit. He meets David Icke, and in the bit with David Icke, I was questioning whether David was in on it or not, whether they'd told him we're making a film, or whether he'd approached him and said like something else. Do you know what I mean? If he'd done a sort of, for want of a better phrase, Borat, Chris Morris style thing, where basically, look, we're genuinely going to do this, but then basically incorporate into his film. Like, do you know what I mean? And I wonder if he did the same thing with Brian Whitman, where he didn't tell him that it was for a film, where they went in to try and elicit that response. In which case, that's really good, actually. Like,
I think they went full Blair Witch. You think when this came out, Blair Witch Project came out in 1999. Yeah. And Blair Witch had all the kind of fake documentaries, fake news stories. So I would kind of guess that they've gone in that vein, because it feels like when they're talking to Icke about, like, I love the story thread of the cult, The Arena, which they've written and they've added into it. But it's quite clear when they talk about that with Icke, he's clearly never heard of that, and actually he's quite open and goes, well, I've not heard of that, but there's other things like that. So it felt like maybe he was just thought that this was an actual documentary crew looking for Jude Kemper. Do you know what I mean?
I thought that as well. Like, but the fact that Brian Whitman is real. Sorry, Brent, what were you saying? He's a real. Did you find out anything else? Or it's just that he's a real radio host?
Here's another link. Brian Whitman was a featured contributor to Glenn Beck's radio.
Oh.
When he appeared as Glenn Beck's very first guest on Glenn's first TV show on cable news.
No way.
Oh, there you go.
I'd be interested to see what his content's like now, whether he's shifted. Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Because people follow the money in the audience, essentially. That's where I think a lot of your QAnon and stuff like that, I think that was actually set up literally by people connected to the political administration of Trump, or the campaign, or whatever. Like, probably to do with various think tanks like Heritage Foundation, stuff like that. I think it's another arm of that, because the only point of it is to get people that aren't interested in voting, who like wrestling and stuff like that, to and I don't mean that I'm sorry, that sounds like I'm taking the piss. I say that because it's got that narrative, that hero narrative. Yeah. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the McMahons were part of WWE fame, were part of the Trump campaign, because they know how to get an audience and they know how to sell a hero and stuff like that. And so, QAnon, people aren't interested in politics. They couldn't tell you the difference between the different groups or what the house does or anything like that. They don't even care about that. But if you tell them that they're saving children from dying, or that you're contributing to stopping worldwide paedophilia, it's almost like a marketing campaign. It's almost like a sort of recent marketing campaign where just by buying our product, you are essentially doing good, helping against this evil of worldwide child trafficking. I mean, you're really not. But, if that makes you feel better for paying to go and watching a film or whatever, then go for it, basically. But
it's a beautiful term, manufacturing narratives, you say there as well, because ultimately everyone does that, whether that's like the political class for certain reasons and agendas, whether it's storytellers and filmmakers, like with the guy here, Brian Kraft, the director of this film. Everyone is constructing narratives.
Yeah.
And David Icke, what he does is construct narratives. And us as human beings, we very much use narrative frameworks to understand and explore the world around us. That's something I really firmly believe, that story is probably like the original human religion. It's like drilled into us. The hero, it's the classic Joseph Campbell, a hero with 1,000 faces, that hero's archetype, which is exactly what QAnon has set someone like Trump up as. Do you know what I mean? And this film does it here. There's character arcs, there's a protagonist, an antagonist, etc.
I think the cruel aspect of the QAnon thing, is it sets up the participants to be heroes as well, and it's never going to happen. It's like they're being led along the garden path, essentially, like they're being manipulated. But basically, it's the use of that. You can be a hero. You can be part of this movement. You can do good. It can give meaning to your very existence. All you've got to do is get this slightly dodgy sod into power, and it's horrible, isn't it? Really, do you know what I mean? Because it's so cruel. It's like Desiato Black or whatever his fucking name is, Mongiato. What was his fucking name? The MAGA mayor.
Oh, Forgiato Blow or some shit.
Oh, I know who you mean. Yeah.
Like, anyway, like they knock out the shit in 10 minutes, and it's manipulative of their audience, basically. They our audience likes it. Well, good for you, but you are being used. Like, so, hey ho. But anyway, so as you say, they go to Kemper's house and they find this book about this cult called the Arena. And they find this videotape of loads of women talking about encounters with reptilian aliens and loads of David Icke books. So they decide that the most sensible thing you can do is go and see David Icke. Now, that's a sentence that is not often said.
No, not at all.
But in this case, they do. And basically...
it's a different time back then.
Yeah. Well, again... He talks about Cathy O'Brien. He immediately says, well, reptilian aliens is a thing. I've spoken to hundreds of witnesses about this type of thing. It's even been written about in a book. Here's Cathy O'Brien. She talks about it. And for years and years and years, Cathy O'Brien and various people, like with the QAnon thing as well, there was a big thing about, well, it's obvious that Tom Hanks is a paedophile, because if he wasn't a paedophile, he would sue all these people that are making these claims, right? Okay. And for years and years and years, I thought that seems perfectly legitimate. There's something to this. Until I found out how the libel laws work in America. Now, in the UK, if I called Tom Hanks a paedophile, he could sue me, right, for defamation. Right, and that would be it. It was just dead straightforward. In America, if you call somebody a paedophile, you have to prove, in order for it to be defamation, that it is financially detrimental to that person. So when your Isaac Cappies and that Sarah Ashcraft and whatnot, and even Cathy O'Brien are saying, Hillary Clinton's a paedophile, so-and-so's a paedophile, everyone's a paedophile, we're all paedophiles, like Oprah. Like, not that Oprah's a paedophile, that's the sort of thing that she does. Anyway, it's like, it's meaningless, because it's not going to affect nobody. Tom Hanks is not going to suddenly wake up broke because some person on the internet said that. It's not going to affect anything. So there's no reason. You know who was once sued for defamation in America for saying that somebody was connected to reptilians, and I think he called him a paedophile? David Icke. David Icke was sued by someone in Canada for $50,000 and lost the case. It was a defamation case. It's one of the guys that's in that John Ronson documentary. It's one of the people that was trying to get David Icke thrown out because at the time he thought he was anti-Semitic. He thought that the reptiles...
that was in Vancouver, wasn't it?
That's the one, yeah. And they felt that the reptiles... I think his name was Richard something. He was bald and wore glasses. But he...
I think he worked for Anti-Defamation League.
It could well have been, yeah. Like they thought that when he mentioned reptiles, it was a subtle euphemism for Jews. It isn't. It really, really isn't. Does he say some stuff that's really cagey about Jews? Yeah, he does do that too. Right? Okay, like the Rothschild stuff, the Sabbatean Frankist stuff, like the protocols of those of Zion stuff. There's lots of stuff that is not particularly cool or accurate, which is the main problem with it. But when he talks about lizards, David Icke genuinely means lizards. And as I say, this is probably the best bit in the film. He's David Icke's doing his shtick, trying to tell Brandon about the reptilian aliens. Although now here's the thing, right? You know, we're debating as to whether this is real or not. Brent told me about brought this bit up. There's a bit where he says, "Well, what should I do? What should I do? My mate's been kidnapped and blah 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 blah." And David Icke says, "You have a choice, Brandon. You can walk away and let them intimidate you and go on into your nice life and forget about Jude and forget about all this shite. Or you can say, hold on a minute. At this point in my life, I'm going to do something about the injustice, manipulation, and the horrors that go on in this world. So I'm going to uncover this and keep going." And that's a bit, because we were reminded again of another person that knew about Bohemian Grove and reptiles and stuff like this, and we speak about him a bit more at length in our Reptilians documentary. So if people haven't listened
Bohemian
to that podcast,
Grove.
Bohemian Grove. Yes, sorry, it's in the Bohemian
Grove episode.
Yeah, so people, please go and listen to that. It's a chap called
Richard McCaslin.
That's the one.
Sorry, you go for it.
No, go for it. Richard McCaslin. Basically, the long and short of it was this guy. He thought he was he wanted to be a masked hero. It's Jesus Christ. It's like something out of Watchmen. He didn't actually have any superpowers or anything. Like it's all a bit tragic, really. Like he had a very, very close friend, and his friend died, and so he hooked up with this sort of young teenage brother of his dead friend, and they started dressing up as superheroes and patrolling the area where they lived. He was called Lynx, and this teenager was called Iron Claw, and he had Wolverine claws that he'd made himself out of iron. And he was wandering around the streets looking for criminals to fight. Yeah, anyway, like, and this he basically had like a bit of a weird life. He became a Marine, and he then became a Batman performer at Six Flags in Astro World. And then later on, he was convicted of stalking a country singer called Shelley Wright. But in 2002, so this is 4 years before this, right, he became the Phantom Patriot. And he's got a bloody brilliant costume. And he basically, what he wanted to do was he planned to break into Bohemian Grove to catch reptilians sacrificing children. And he broke in with a series of guns and knives and swords, and wandered around trying to find these reptilians. Got a bit lost because although he brought all these weapons, he didn't bring any spare batteries for his torch, and so he got lost wandering around. He eventually found like a cabin and sort of broke in and stole a bit of food, and then was arrested. And he later wrote a comic about it. But here's the thing. He really believed David Icke. He absolutely 100% believed David Icke. And on his way to Bohemian Grove, he stopped off to see Alex Jones and to get Alex Jones's approval for breaking into Bohemian Grove to catch the reptilians. And so this is the thing. Like, okay, these things have consequences. So when David Icke is telling this bloke to do this, like, again, we don't know whether he thought this was a film. This bit could have been scripted. He could have been told to say this. But if it's going in dry, if it's a sort of like, you know, he doesn't know that this is going for a film and stuff, and he's essentially advising this bloke, I don't know whether that's good advice, like, to be quite honest. You know what I mean? It could be dangerous. And it could also be the sort of thing that, again, sends people like Richard McCaslin going, all right, okay, I'm hearing you. Get some guns and go into Bohemian Grove. That's what you're telling me between the lines, isn't it, David? So I don't know. Like, what do you think about that, Brent?
No, I think exactly the same. It would enable another person like Richard McCaslin if they looked up to David Icke, they heard him say that, be like, yeah, I've got his blessing to go do these things.
Yeah. Again, it's almost like the bloke that broke into the pizza shop. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. By Owen Schroyer, when Owen Schroyer told everyone.
Yeah, Owen Schroyer told everybody, why not just go down there and check it out? You know, drive across state with a machine gun and and see what happens. Owen Schroyer didn't say that, but that's what the bloke ended up doing. And so I don't know. Like, it's just one of those, isn't it? Like, where you just realise as you sort of get a bit older as well that some things have consequences. Now, I watched it as a film, even when I was in the height of my sort of conspiranoia or whatever you want to call it. Right? Okay, I had no intention of going to Bohemian Grove. I thought about making a documentary, because they were the things du jour and whatnot. But yeah, so it's difficult, isn't it? But yeah, the point is, like, as we're realizing more and more with things like Richard Hall, things like Alex Jones and Sandy Hook, certain other things. That bloke that thought his family was a reptilian, so murdered them with a fucking harpoon gun. Even David Icke himself, at the point where, this was long after his first marriage ended. This was long after he was living with 3 women, including his wife, his girlfriend, and another girlfriend. At some point, when he was going off with he narrowed it down to 1. Who knows? Maybe used some sort of Excel spreadsheet or something like that. Like
the sex cult fell apart quick.
Yeah. But then it sort of went tits up with his chosen beau as well, because he became ultra paranoid, thinking that she was a reptilian, and he ordered her off. So. And this is the strange thing, because, I don't wish to spoilers here or anything, okay, but the actual origins of the David Icke pretty much pinched it. He says that he got it from talking to lots and lots of witnesses, right? Okay. And somebody that told him that they'd witnessed the Prime Minister, whose name escapes me. Can't remember.
Ed Heath?
Thank you very much. Yeah, turning into a reptile. And then obviously he'd spoken to Credo Mutuar, and later that woman who did revelations of a mother goddess and stuff like that.
Arizona Wilder.
Thank you, Arizona Wilder. However, the reptilian theory, as again we discussed in our very first podcast, is remarkably similar to certain media that already existed, like certainly V, basically. Yeah. It's a TV series about reptilian aliens that are disguised as human beings and come to Earth to take over the planet secretly, or not secretly, but it's a secret that they're aliens. And this came out it was well known in current popular culture. That's basically David Icke's theory, which is a bit.
It came out, right, 1984.
Yeah. And so 14 years later, David Icke came up with exactly the same idea, or discovered that basically the exact same idea just so happened to be true, and you should pay him to read a book about it. You could also point out that the Shadow Kingdom and Conan the Barbarian by Robert E. Howard was about shape-shifting lizard men who rule the earth secretly, or that the 1987 book Beyond the Supernatural was about a race of lizards called the Datura who seek into this dimension from another dimension and drink human blood. Or you could have noticed the Draconians episode of Doctor Who, where there's literally reptilians from the planet Draconius that look just like the Chitahori painting. And basically in this, there's something happening where they're disguised to look like humans and humans are disguised to look like them. And, there does seem to be a few references in sort of popular culture that seem to, I don't know, perfectly match what it is. Now, some might say, well, it's obviously these people are deep occultists. Doctor Who is obviously deeper. John Pertwee is a deep occultist, and this is the revelation of the method. Or it could be, as we alluded to earlier, that David Icke had predicted that the world was going to end in 1997, so he needed a really, really big story to sort of take people's mind off of that if he was going to stay in the public eye and continue to you know, to push things. As I said, it'd be brilliant if it was all a big, it was all a joke. That on his deathbed, I got you all to believe in reptilians. That's what you get for laughing at my stupid shell suit. Like, but anyway, so they've got to see David Icke. And there was an interesting bit in this because basically he says, like, oh, I don't buy this, David. Like, you've shown me all this, like, reptilian symbology around London. I don't care. Where's the actual evidence? And David gets a little bit indignant and basically does the thing which a lot of conspiracists do, which is, like, he essentially says, in more words, do your own research. It's like, oh, it's like this. It's a massive tapestry. You're not going to get it straight away from like just from one thing. Like you've got to see lots and lots of stuff. And it's like, it depends how kind you want to be, because like that, you could say one thing. You could say that, well, it's a very complicated subject and it's not the sort of subject that basically a lot of people would take up immediately, so you need to look at a lot of disparate threads in order to get the context of why this might be plausible. Or you could look at it as you need to keep reading shit until you're brainwashed, like, and you could make a convincing argument for either of those things in that, to be quite honest. Like, as I say, to be honest, I think at this point David did actually believe that stuff in real life, and he makes the mention of this is a few strands on a massive tapestry. Anyway, so Brandon's not convinced by the reptile nonsense and he decides to go home. But when he gets home, he discovers that his flat's been broken into and he panics and has to get his children out of school, which begs the question, the fuck did he do with his kids whilst he was in London? Like, I watched Insidious the other day, right? I'd never seen it before, right? Okay, and there's a plot point where they've got two kids and a baby, and one of the kids is in a coma and the other kid keeps remembering, like, hearing him walking around at night. And then about 2/3 through the film, when the mother turns up to explain the fucking plot of it, they completely forget that they've got two other children. And so for the rest of the film, the baby and the younger kid are never mentioned, and there's all these things happening in the house, and we're sat there watching it going, haven't they got other children? Where are their other children? They totally forgot it. Like, but anyway, so they basically he starts to really, really watch this footage, the footage of Kemper that he got when he was beaten up by the security guards. And he notices that in one frame, the security guards, a Secret Service agent, turns from a human eye into a reptilian eye, like a straight, pupil. And that was, I thought it was cracking, because that was all the thing that was happening at the time. There's the Bush video, and there's various things, which it's turned out that they're all basically like, it's digital artifacts, isn't it? Basically, like it's not somebody turning into a lizard on television.
Again, very much a sign of the times, right?
Yeah.
Like studying those videos, even like the 9/11 truth stuff of the planes hitting the buildings, where transfers of the videos of like square digital artifacts is like the whole thing with the eyes is like trying to study videos on YouTube.
Well, you had the opportunity, didn't you? Like, because YouTube was a thing then. I mean, back then it was probably dead basic. I've got no idea when it became like a major thing. But this was a new thing. That was the point. You used to have to read a fuck ton of books and like just read the books and read the things and blah, blah, blah. And then it got to the point where you could watch the DVDs, which was great because, that makes it a lot easier. But then there came the point where you could literally get the videos yourselves and pour over them. And I remember people looking at adverts and stuff and freezing frames. There was one that I was running, and there was some kid on a bicycle that was going up and down or whatever. And this says, look, every time his wheel goes into shot, it becomes a pentagram. Like the spokes became a pentagram. And that was the point. People were breaking stuff down to that degree. The Rihanna video where the umbrella one, where apparently it reveals a demon at the end, where there's a demonic face when she's sort of like bent over.
I was all on that stuff, man. Like you said before, you were trying to describe like my stuff to someone else, and you said it was very much on like the vigilant citizen tip.
Yeah.
That is exactly true. That's exactly where I was.
I mean, I used to, because here's the thing again, because it's new and because you haven't seen these videos, They're showing you Run DMC things with like Freemason hats in. They're showing you like, is it Rihanna is an Illuminati princess or whatever, blah blah blah, or this sort of stuff. And you go, you can't deny it's there, but then you understand. Oh, hang on. If I know about this, I'm pretty sure her marketing team know about this, and it's just a way for them to get. The one that got me was when ASAP Rocky basically got a load of shit for doing that sort of occult tinged video, and he went on Twitter or something. He went, "I had no say in it. I fucking turned up and they put a raven on my arm or whatever they did," and at that point I thought, oh yeah, but these got 1 million extra views because people from the conspiracy crowd are going to that, which kind of sort of, to a degree, sort of knackered that up, really, for me, all the sort of occult symbolism in music stuff.
And it shows how pretentious a lot of that music videos, advertising, like, they take imagery and just throw it in with no real consideration, because it's a talking point.
Absolutely. And also there's a degree of like either satanic panic or sort of Christian concern, that sort of Kiss is Knights in Satan's Service, like, Doc and his Devon killing kids even now, and ridiculous shit like that. Like, it comes from the perspective that Aleister Crowley is a terrible person, and anything to do with him is to be like frowned upon. And then you've got musicians, Sting and Jay-Z and all these people who basically, let's be honest, these are artistic people that are into sort of like artistic Jimmy Page and stuff like that. You've got all the fucking money in the world, right? And all the time in the world. You're probably going to read about weird stuff because you get bored. Like, do you know what I mean? So, like, and if you're that interested in that sort of esoteria anyway, but if it's framed as purely evil. But anyway, like the chappie's got a reptilian eye, and Truth Seeker TV gets interviews an occult expert, and this is a thing that you occasionally wheel out on like things, and it's like, how does one become an expert in the occult to the point where the Discovery Channel phones you up? Like, that's something that I'd really like to do at some point. I guarantee you'll find that a lot of them don't know what they're talking about. Like, I bet if you get, like, particularly a lot of these UFO ones as well, fuck, we know actually. Like, looking at particularly some of the sort of ancient archaeology stuff, we know that actually these people don't know shit from Shiola. But like, anyway, we digress. So this occult expert talks about the arena, and they believe that Eve had sex with the serpent, and they believe that this spawned the reptilian race. And this is quite reminiscent of the Madame Blavatsky concept of the Brotherhood of the Snake, which she talks about in a couple of books, and it's supposedly this sort of ancient cult that's potentially got connections to Lemuria and Atlantis. There's one slight problem with all of her references to the Brotherhood of the Snake, is that basically there's no source material other than her book and later books that basically discuss this secret cult. There's no proof of their existence anywhere on the planet. So we know. But anyway, so Brandon follows these arena people to a big pyramid-shaped building with the Secret Service guarding it outside. So that throws everything together. You've got reptilian cult people, you've got a pyramid, and you've got the Secret Service, basically. And at this point, Brandon decides that he hooks up with the Marine that we were told right at the beginning died with the bizarre dismembering suicide. He talks about Dick Cheney shape-shifting, and he says that's what your friend Jude was there to capture. He knows that Dick Cheney's a shapeshifter, and he went there to film it. And you could do this because they're going to do another ritual at Bohemian Grove. And it's all right, mate. I've got the hookup. I can get you inside Bohemian Grove. And this made me chuckle, actually, because he gets him inside Bohemian Grove by signing him up to be a waiter. Now, if you listen to our Bohemian Grove podcast, you know that that's actually a thing that you can do. This impenetrable like hideout of the rich and famous, it looks for staff every single year. And so if you go on the bohemiangrove.com website, you can apply to be a waiter at Bohemian Grove and you get in. So it's not that difficult to get inside if you really, really want to. Anyway, so he fits himself up with a hidden camera, and I thought this was nice as well. This gave me sort of Eyes Wide Shut vibes to a degree. He's there, and there's loads of old. I thought he was a bit subtle, like load of old blokes sat around in sort of like really nice things, and you saw these young girls with the legs draped all over them. And there's a bit where they're doing some sort of weird, sort of quasi-Masonic, quasi-Order of the Moose style. A fine mahawk to you all, whoop! And it's nonsensical, but it's harmless, basically. But Brandon sneaks downstairs, okay, after sort of evading Secret Service, and he stumbles across, oh no, it's a satanic ritual. It's a load of people stood in a ring, chanting, and somehow he manages to sort of walk through. And you must remember at the time he's dressed as a waiter, but we'll suspend our disbelief for the time being. Like, he walks through the crowd to the center of the ring, and he sees that there's somebody there that seems to be eating a naked woman who's strapped to a satanic altar. And the bloke turns around, and we don't see anything. But later, Truth Seeker TV, they enhanced the footage, which was sort of pinged back to them via some sort of webcam thing, and they come to the conclusion that this bloke is a reptilian alien. And it's quite nice the way they do it, because it's like I think they know their limitations, so they show it for an incredibly short amount of time. It's very blurry, but it looks like what they probably did do is they got a picture of Dick Cheney and a picture of a reptilian alien and mashed it together. But it's pretty cool, basically. Brandon disappears, basically, and so they get this private detective in, who turns out to be Joey Diaz, he's playing Tony Diaz in this, so it's like acting, but it's Joey Diaz, mates of Joe Rogan, like the person that destroyed Owen Benjamin's mind with edibles, and it was I was quite a shock to see him, and he's been in some big films as well. He was in the Full 9 Yards, Mean Machine, whatever that the remake of that with Adam Sandler was, basically.
Whole 9 Yards.
Thank you. That's the one. So, and yeah, my notes here are: fuck me, Joey Diaz is a good actor. And I think, I don't know if he's a brilliant actor, but I think, as we spoke about earlier, it just shows he's a cut above the rest of the people. He really, really sells it. He really comes across as natural. And as you said, Greg, with the others, I'm very conscious sometimes that I'm watching like an actor. Do you know what I mean? I mean, again, to be honest, I let that pass because it's it's low budget and it's entertaining and it's a good film and I enjoyed it. But basically, anyway, so Brandon turns up, Joey Diaz finds him, but he's had his fingers cut off. He's had and Mr. X goes and meets him. And he says that they've messed with Brandon's mind. And Brandon's just a complete shadow of his former self. He's almost like catatonic. But the only thing that he keeps repeating over and over again is the tapestry, which is, we assume it's a reference to David Icke. It could be a reference to, is it the bio tapestry? Could be a reference to anything. We have to assume, because of the mention of tapestry before, that he's referring to the bit earlier in the film and not to something completely different, because that wouldn't make sense. So anyway, Truth Seeker TV at the end basically says that they think that the whole story is true, that they've analysed the video and they've analysed Mr. X's story and the state of Brandon, and they think that the story is true. And that's where it ends. So it ends on a complete downer, with Brandon having his mind melted, Mr. X having his home destroyed, and the knowledge that there are reptilian aliens involved with some sort of crazed biblical cult that are at the very, very highest levels of government. So David Icke was right all along. Is the message of this film. Again, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I would recommend people watch it. I mean, obviously we've spoiled it for you now.
We've absolutely ruined it. We've ruined it. I mean, I love the concept, but I did feel by the end, if I'm absolutely honest, I feel they fumbled it a little bit. And I think, again, because the concept's so strong, and some of the way it was put together, the use of still images, graphics, the use of Brian Whitman, David Icke, all that kind of stuff, and even building things on like the guy that broke into Buckingham Palace, building it on grains of truth. There were some elements that were so strong, but then some of the stuff, like when it showed some of Jude Kemper's documentary, the clips were terrible. It was just like this clip of Dick Cheney with a strobe light. Like, it could have gone so much deeper into the reality, the world it was creating. That was the biggest thing that held back for me. And even at the end, when Brandon, goes into Bohemian Grove, I kind of felt like it was a repetition of like Jude Kemper disappeared from going undercover. And it feels like they've run out of ideas, and they're just like, now we're going to send this guy undercover, and it's like the same narrative element repeating itself. So
yeah, that's a fair point. I've noticed that in Judd Apatow films, when he's run out of ideas, he has someone get hit by a car. And like it happens fucking twice in Superbad. Like, that's how lazy he is. Anyway, well, I tell you what, Greg, you need to do it better, then, man. You need to do an English version of this,
it's genius. I think the way it's set up as this fake program, and you mentioned, was it Series 7?
Yeah.
You know, even filmmakers like Peter Watkins. I don't know if you've seen like Punishment Park. Films like that from like the late 60s and the early 70s, and he made The War Game, which was originally funded by the BBC and was like a fake program if a nuclear bomb was dropped.
Okay.
He used the government's plan as the narrative structure of this fake documentary and showed that it wouldn't work. They would descend into chaos.
Oh, I've got to see that.
Yeah, the BBC pulled the film. They were like, oh my God, we can't put that out. That's going to scare the hell out of people. And CND for years have used that in their campaigning. But Peter Watkins is that type of filmmaker who created fake, they call them mockumentaries. I wouldn't use that term because I don't think it's mocking, but this way of kind of, and this does it perfectly, is like, it's the kind of thing you'd come across on YouTube. But because it created such a reality, that's, for me as a filmmaker, I was probably a bit more critical on some of the performances that didn't feel as real as people like Icke that were in it, because he was real. So I think it's a genius kind of concept, but definitely there's scope to making a more updated version. And it reminds me a bit of like Umberto Eco's Foucault's Pendulum, this idea of people creating a conspiracy theory and putting it out into the world and then people believing it and it coming real, that this film nicely kind of plays with Icke's theories, these theories about reptilians, but also puts out a documentary potentially that people might go, well, actually, this is real. There is a case of footage of Dick Cheney shape-shifting.
I'm amazed that footage, I mean, it probably has somewhere, but you know that bit at the end of the ritual, I'm amazed it hasn't popped up somewhere, like with people thinking it's real
or something like that.
And I think the strongest element in this film was the bit of the women talking about having the ritual abuse, because it actually seemed like the type of clip you would see. And I think that was some of the strengths of the film, where bits were like, if that clip was taken out and just uploaded, that would get so many views and many people talking about it. So it's really interesting, again, like this creation of narratives that you mentioned earlier, Neil. This is what this film does. And it perfectly at times uses that language of badly shot, secretly recorded clips of these things happening that feel real. It's like trying to create a reality. So yeah, I definitely encourage people to watch the film, but I'm probably a bit more harsher on I felt like by the end, when they started talking about remote viewing,
they
ran out of ideas, and they didn't satisfy the end. They were just like, maybe there'll be another program, and it's like, oh man, you fumbled it, in my opinion.
Yeah, potentially, but I've forgotten about the remote viewing bit. Yeah, that's just
tacked on, right?
Yeah. That's fair.
That was a height of the conversation at that time, though. Like, was it Major Ed Dames?
Ingo Swann, and they kept going on. Was it Coast to Coast?
Yeah, they kept going exactly. That was around that time.
I've got that book actually, the one that was written by Jim Mars, and the only bit that I can remember about it is that they'd remote viewed the Loch Ness monster and decided that it was the ghost of a plesiosaur. I was like, right, well, case closed. There you go. Now we know. But apparently that worked. Did anyone ever try that? I bought the purported remote viewing manual, but I don't think it was, because it was incomprehensible. So I think someone had just sold me some shit on eBay, to be quite honest. But there was a supposed remote viewing manual that you could buy that would teach you to. It's not even transcendental sort of meditation, is it? You don't fly there or something. You sort of like, it sort of appears in your brain basically, and you sort of you can see it. And the idea was that, this is what it said in this manual anyway, this could be taught to even the most lowly grunt. And the concept was, if there's a big hill or something, you can remote view what's on the other side of the hill. So it's like a sort of mind periscope or whatever. And whether it works or not, I've got absolutely no idea. Probably not. Otherwise, somebody would have told deaf people about it, really. But
I just think of rap lyrics of the time, and just think of references to remote viewing and all these elements that are like in this film. Here, just sounds like the music.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. It's almost perfectly encapsulated. Like, it's sort of like a bit of a time capsule, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Like, do you know what I mean? And again, it's got a fondness for these conspiracy theories. Like, it doesn't necessarily believe them, but it treats them with respect. It doesn't go, oh, this is fucking stupid, and it doesn't get anything wrong. Like, so, you were saying earlier, Brent, that the chap was probably a truther. I think you may well be correct, because, or at least he's at least done his due diligence in his research, and he understands the concepts of the theories that he's talking about, Bohemian Grove, and to a lesser extent mind control, the reptilians, and he knows who Cathy O'Brien is, and deep underground military bases, and
he's a fan of the culture if he's not a believer.
Yeah, totally. Like, but again, because of the way that he does it, again, when I first sort of rewatched it, I thought he was kind of sort of taking the piss a bit about David Icke, but then when I watched it again to make the notes and stuff yesterday, I was like, no, I don't think he is. But I still err on the side that he probably didn't tell David that it was quite the context until afterwards. I think you nailed it, Greg. I think they decided, let's do a Blair Witch with this, and and so interesting. There's this thing, because like the similar sort of thing with the Blair Witch, right? Okay, was like where it sort of fell down was some of the performances and some of the sort of like a bit sterile. What was a better version of the Blair Witch, as you sort of alluded to earlier, was the documentary The Curse of the Blair Witch, which was about the so-called serial killer. And I seem to remember he was scrawling all those symbols all over the wall of, like, the psychiatric hospital or whatever, and like that was better. Like, but yeah, so I mean, this is the thing. Maybe it's lessons learned. Like, it is a bit of its time. It could be improved. Like, particularly if you sort of did it nowadays with the sort of like YouTube and Rumbles and podcasts and phone-ins and stuff. You've got a whole sort of like, even Twitter and stuff like that. You could even make a film that was basically like, there's almost no traditional film in it. Every aspect of it is some sort of social media or something pulled off somebody's phone or something like that. Like, that'd be interesting.
That's kind of how we consume.
Yeah.
And it's about the narratives we construct, especially living in this post-truth kind of world now, of like, who do we listen to? Who do we subscribe to? And they are the realities, as Robert Anton Wilson described them, reality tunnels that we construct from the information we get. And yeah, I think that's fascinating. Is like this film very much is that 2006, like say Blair Witch meets Loose Change, and that was how people got their info. Now, how we get our info looks very different. It's hyper magnified since 2006. My God. And yeah, it would be, again, it's like, you know, it's that classic thing that all filmmaking, whether fiction or non-fiction, is all completely controlled and manipulated to entertain, to convince you. You know, fundamentally, everything is propaganda in some respects. So it is interesting to play with those tools of language and communication, which I think at points this film nails it. But because it's so real in those places, it means the other parts struggle.
Fair enough. So what we're saying, strong 6 out of 10?
Yeah, definitely.
Strong 6 out of 10, but we'd recommend people to watch it, particularly if you're interested in sort of conspiracy sort of stuff, basically.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, totally. You can get it free on YouTube.
Yes, it is available free on YouTube. That
gives it an extra point, actually. Well, give it an extra half a point. 6.5. You don't have to pay for it.
6.5. 6.6.
There you go.
Nice.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, I enjoyed that.
That was wicked.
Thank you for listening to Some Dare Call It Conspiracy. Follow us on Twitter at Some Dare Podcast for all the latest from us. And if you want to support us, please consider joining us on patreon.com/Some Dare Call It Conspiracy. You'll be able to get early access to episodes, including each full deep dive series on day 1, and exclusive Patreon-only episodes. When you subscribe to our Initiate tier for a $5 or our Handler tier for a $10, you'll get a welcome pack of 4 of Neil's books, 8 of my albums and EPs, and a PDF of Headache Comics 4, courtesy of Nicholas C. Gray. And to our first Patreons, thank you so much for your support from the both of us at Some Dare Call It Conspiracy.